Hi, it's Richard Jones here from Fearless Speakers, and in this video we're going to take a look at some of the content that you might include in a signature talk and how you might structure it. But before we go there, let's just have a little recap on where we've got to so far. So in the previous video we talked about having two key first steps, which is to find your key message that you want to deliver in your talk and then agree on your intended impact. Now, I've done them as step one being the key message and step two being the intended impact, but actually you could do those things the other way around, or indeed often they feed off each other. Sometimes you kind of do them together. But anyway, those are the first two steps. So once you've decided on that, where do you go next? Well, step three is all about finding stories. Now, I'm a firm believer that the best way to create connection with your audience in any situation, but particularly when you're giving a signature talk, is to use stories. Now, ideally, I'm talking here about personal stories, stories about things that happen to you in your own life. Why is that going to create connection? Because firstly, you're being vulnerable. You're sharing some real parts of you. And so people will be attracted to that and they'll lean in and they'll want to hear more. But generally speaking, stories are hardwired into us. If you think about it, thousands of years ago, we used to sit around, our ancestors used to sit around the campfire, recounting stories of the day and mythical stories. And that's how social bonds started to form. I don't know a huge amount about it from a neuroscience perspective, but my understanding is that storytelling helps you to access both parts of your brain in terms of both the creative side, the more artistic side, and also the more logical, focused side of your brain as well. So if you're trying to get a message across and you want to establish a key point, then what a great way to do that is through a story, because that helps the listener to access both parts of their brain. By listening to the story, they're also going to create mental pictures in their mind, and that's going to help them to remember it so much more as well. So what's happening is you're eliciting a creative and emotional response, and also you're helping them to make a logical leap. It's absolutely the best way to get your points across. Now, if you don't have any personal stories to tell to illustrate the points that you're trying to make, then what you can do is you can use stories about other people. And if you don't have those, you can even make stories up. So those of you perhaps who were growing up remember Aesop's fables. A fable is a story which has a moral at the end. So you could actually use an existing fable or even make one up yourself. In terms of storytelling about other people, for example, Simon Sinek has a fantastic TED talk called Why Good Leaders Make You Feel Safe. And he tells lots of stories in that TED talk about military leaders and how they use their power, or at least how they concede power and give power to the people who are following them. It's a brilliant, brilliant way of illustrating the points that he's making. So we've got our stories then. What else can we do? What else can we do to develop our talk? So step four then, once we've found the stories that we want to use, is to plan a rough outline. So before we start scripting, this is the point where we really sort of get in our heads, how is this talk going to be laid out? And so what I tend to do is, if I'm delivering a talk like this, I will start with a blank sheet of paper, and literally at the top of the page, I will put the key message, so whatever that key message is. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to set out my introduction and my conclusion. And in between those two things, I'm going to be setting up my main subpoint. So we're going to have a key message, but there's probably 3, maybe 4 messages underneath that all link to the key message, but are all separate points. So then I write down what those points are. And then what I do is I decide what's the best way for me to illustrate each of those points? Now, it could be that you just use one way, or it could be a multiple of ways. So we've already mentioned stories. That's really a great one to have in your kit bag. But also things like quotations, statistics, examples. You could show a little video, whatever it is to help you to really reinforce that point. Put that down on your plan there as well. Okay, so now you've got it all laid out and you know the content you're going to have to come up with. So the next stage then is to start drafting. Now then, I know that a lot of presentation speaking coaches out there tell their clients not to script their talks. And I can understand why. Because if you were to just sit down in front of a laptop and type out a script, it's probably going to sound stilted. And the reason for that is because you have created it using your text speak. My opinion is that everybody, at least I personally do, and I think most people, have a different voice when they talk out loud as opposed to when they type. It's accessing a different part of the brain, in fact. And so that's the reason why you end up talking in a different way when you speak as opposed to when you text. So it does make sense that if you were to script your talk by writing it down, it may well feel forced and sound scripted. So this is what I tell my clients to do instead. Basically, open up a voice dictation app, and the one that I use is called otter.ai, so otter as in the animal, and basically press record and speak into it. And that's the way that I developed my ebook on Signature Talks, for example. And those dictation apps, and particularly Otter, they're really, really accurate. Generally speaking, 99% of the words that I speak have been captured correctly. Often I'll have to correct the punctuation, but the actual words, it does a really great job. So that would be my suggestion. Do that for each element of your talk. Don't necessarily do it all in one go, because that could take quite a long time. But let's say, right, each story. Okay, tell the story into the app. And then once you've got that, you then need to take what you've got, read through it, edit it, make it, condense it down, get rid of all the ums and ahs, get rid of anything where you're going off on a tangent. Just make sure that everything now you've got in there is really reinforcing the points you want to make. And so now, copy that into a Word document or whatever software you use, and you've got a script ready to start practicing.